Welcome, everybody. We're glad you're with us today for the Heartset Leaders podcast. We have some amazing guests that we'll introduce you to in just a few moments. But let me just start by just giving you a little bit of a flavor of what the Heartset Leaders podcast series is about. It's powered by the Educare Foundation, and it's featuring authentic conversations with educators, thought leaders, heart leaders who live and lead with compassion, courage, commitment. And we aim that each of these episodes energizes you to lead with greater heart. We're going to explore heart-set education, how it transforms schools and teams and communities across California and beyond. And part of the intention here is to have us recognize that each of us is a leader if we choose to be. And we have different styles, different methods, and perhaps from today to take some ideas and ways of leading with value, with commitment, with empathy, and let that be a style that you may enhance in your lives. So I'm just ever so pleased today that we have two of my favorite folks in the field of education together. And we have José Navarro and Jeff Austin, and our lives together and our work in schools together go back many years. And I was privileged to meet them as they were both starting a fantastic school in Los Angeles Unified School District that we'll talk about soon enough. But let me start by just giving you a little background on the formal bios, so to speak, of José Navarro and Jeff Austin. And a little bit about José. José Luis Navarro IV is the lead coach at the Los Angeles Education Partnership and the CEO at the Navarro Group. And before this, he served as a support coordinator, leading innovative reforms in LAUSD, Los Angeles Unified School District. Notably, he's the founding principal of the award-winning Social Justice Humanitas Academy, which won the 2015 National Community School Teacher-Powered Schools Awards. Jose holds very many accolades, including a National Board Certification, California Teacher of the Year, and Latino Educator of the Year. Jose is also an adjunct professor at California State University's Dominguez Hills. And prior to teaching, he worked as a Prineville hotshot firefighter and a Peace Corps volunteer. His dedication stems from the belief that all students, all kids deserve care, they deserve support, and he's been inspired throughout his life by his children. And you'll get a chance to hear some of the wonderful stories of his life and his lessons that he's learned. With us today also with Jose, and they're colleagues through the years together, is Jeff Austin. And Jeff is currently the Director of Networks for Teacher-Powered Schools and a Community Schools Coach for Los Angeles Education Partnership. He was a high school teacher, design team member, and principal at the Social Justice Humanitas Academy, a pilot school in the Los Angeles Unified School District. In addition to being a National Board Certified Teacher, Jeff was 2013 LAUSD and Los Angeles County Teacher of the Year. And he's not busy supporting schools around the country. Jeff loves watching soccer, hiking, whiskey tasting, and spending time with his wife and their two daughters at their home in Pasadena. So with that as a formal introduction, let me informally introduce two of my dear friends and creative powerhouses in the field of education. And when I met them back at Social Justice Humanitas Academy, I was just blown away by their vision and their sincere love of kids and how they built a culture that was none like I had seen in public schools before. So with that in mind, let me pull back a bit and welcome them both. And any words of welcome you might have, Jose and Jeff, let's just give you a chance to introduce yourselves the way you would like.
You go ahead, Jeff.
Cool. Thanks, Stu. Yeah, I mean, it's always a pleasure to have a chance to talk with you, Stu, and catch up with Jose. And yeah, it's we're living in kind of wild times right now. And as we talk about this, I just last night where I live, where my kids go to school, the district made basically about a $30 million budget cut, including science teachers and supporters and librarians and athletic coaches and So when we talk about some of these issues, it sort of like comes back to that. It's still an everyday fight, and so I'm happy to have a chance to talk about kind of how we work through some of those systemic challenges.
Thank you, Jeff.
I agree with Jeff. It's really nice to catch up with you, Stu. It's really nice to see Armando and Jeff. I feel like we were successful and our school is successful. And ever since Jeff and I left, it's really has not been as successful. And I'm not blaming you for that. I'm just saying that it takes certain vision. And I think you go back to your values. And I feel that when you value relationships, you tend to build them. When you believe that everything in your life you've gotten because of people, not because of money, not because of education, but because you took care of people, you tend to take care of people. And I know that I just have a million little sayings that I've kind of conjured over the years, but just as I've kind of put stuff together, I've stolen from other people, I've made it mine, or I just original. But whatever the case might be, it's just over the years, the edubabble has changed, and people keep chasing. And I find it so interesting. They keep chasing the silver bullet to fix education, and there is no silver bullet. It takes time, and if you retreat to your values and what you believe in, and you have your own personal vision and mission, the values never really change too much, and your beliefs tend to become reality. At least your reality, and you can make them your reality. I'm not talking some woo-woo manifestation stuff. I'm talking literally, if you believe it's going to happen. If I believe poor kids can't learn, then they're not going to learn. But if I believe poor kids can learn, if I believe the relationships do matter, if I believe my teachers are indeed exactly what those students need, I can make it so. But if I believe the opposite as well, then I can make that so. And so it's that idea that, and I've heard this before, whether you believe you can or you can't, you're probably right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that I don't chase the silver bullet. I know Jeff has never done that either. We just go after what has worked in the past, and what has worked in the past for both of us is taking care of the people around us. And we still have those people in our lives. We still have kids. I mean, I'm friends with Jeff on social media, and I see students, from razzing him about Liverpool or still razzing me, whatever, the Kool-Aid man. I remember Martin would always tease us about, oh yeah, and about Jeff would come in a room and there'd be like, oh man, Mr. Austin's here. And he would make a joke and he'd walk out or something like that. And my point is that if you take care of the people around you, everything else seems to fall into place. And I feel like we were able to have a very successful school because we always took care of the people. They always made our job better.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I saw that in one of the first times I was close to you, Jose, was, hey, Stu, come out about 7:30, 8 o'clock. You'll see what goes on in our school. And I could see you on the sidewalk in front of the school there and kind of pulling the kids in, cheering them on. They were running in there to get in before the bell. But it was always with, good to see you. How you doing today? Whoever it was. And there was that happiness and joy of how they were met by you guys and how they came to a place where they knew they were cared for, they were seen, they were respected. It was a whole different. I mean, there's not many schools I saw kids that feverish in a joyful way getting into the door of a school the way they were that morning, and I think that carried the tone of how you said something very unique. And if there's anything that you might speak to, how you built that culture of relationship, the both of you, and I saw it how you related to your staff, to your parents in ways that parents typically hadn't been treated in my eyes when they come to school. It was like, we're a community here. We're not just teaching your kids. So however you want to speak to building that sense of family, I think it spoke so highly of your school.
Just real quick, I feel like it was by design. All I'm saying is if you saw me shaking hands out on the sidewalk, we set it up that the minute they enter the gate, there's Jeff. And so it was never like one person. It was never dependent upon one thing. It was always a system. Go ahead, Jeff. I'm sorry.
No, I 100% agree. It wasn't. It wasn't. That was one of the things that I definitely when I took over as principal from Jose, the idea of starting their day out by having the principal put the time in to welcome them that day, like just that idea of being seen, I think really mattered. And I think and not to, I just got used to the idea that when I was out there and then my assistant principal, especially after the pandemic, Roberto Vega. Me and Vega were always out there. Sometimes it's checking in with the kids, sometimes it's clowning on the kid, sometimes getting clowned on by the kids. And I think just starting that day of like that recognition of it's worth my time to be out here and just say hi, and not a lot of people did that. And I think sometimes I think that's a value statement. Um, when I dropped my daughter Abigail off at her school, Mr. Trapp, who's the I don't know his official title. Actually, his official job got cut last night. Um, great. He's also a great teacher, but he stands out by the gate, saying hi to every kid, giving fist bumps to every kid, waving to parents. And I think that's a statement of values that transcends like not just the front gate, but once they enter the building, like our kids usually hit 3 or 4 or 5 adults before they. I mean, it was like what was it, Jose? Like 250 feet from the front gate to the first door, and they hit 4 or 5 adults saying hi before they hit that front door, before they hit that classroom door. And I think that always made a statement. Like it was a thing we did. It wasn't like it was like a calendar item. I didn't, it wasn't a thing where I said, "Oh, I'm too busy to do that."
Okay, it's interesting because I thought about how systemically, again, you think about a system, we would say hi. It looked like we were just saying hi. We're wasting time. We knew that our work was the job. I'm sorry, our job was the work of saying hello. And we knew that if we said hello, it was an investment. If we gave people high fives, fist bumps, it was an investment. But also, we knew that we were going to have to do our work later because we had, I mean, again, it was by design. So part of that system was, Stu, was as a kid walked in, I can see, are you crying? How do you know, are you wearing the exact same clothes? Are you dirty? I can do a quick little check-in. Are we gonna have the same thing we had
Mm-hmm.
yesterday? I just know my own son and my own daughter, they're gonna make mistakes. And are you gonna shame them for what they did yesterday? Or are you gonna give them a fresh chance? If you
Mm-hmm.
chance, usually you allow people to be who they want to be instead of putting them in a box. And so like again, it was systemic that if I can meet the kids at the door and let them know that they're seen, they matter, and they're worthy. Man, I see you, you matter, and you're worthy. Just real quick, I had this one girl we saw the helicopters because we were about 3 lights from the projects at our school. And I saw the helicopters and we knew that might be a lockdown. So I was in contact with LEUSD and this one girl came and she just had, I'll keep her name out of it. And I know you know what I'm talking about, Jeff. She had like deer in the headlights look. Her father just stabbed her mother and she saw it. And that's why the helicopters are up in the air and she came to school. I asked her, I said, I'm just curious, if you can't come to school, I understand. She said, and in between the lines was, I feel safer at school than I do at home. And how many times when we're looking at data, it was that kid that was here 100% of the time, yet they had a zero point 0.0 GPA. And you're like, what the hell's going on? You're here every day. Why are you failing? You ask them, and you think about the pandemic that Jeff mentioned, how many of our kids were alone at home with their abusers? How many kids? And so when you ask the kid, why are you here every day but still failing? Because it's safer here than it is at home. And if we can create that environment where people feel safe, then you can get them up Maslow. And Maslow has always held water for me. But it was, again, it was in our best interest. I worked on enlightened self-interest. It was always in our best interest to shake hands. So you would have saw me sitting on the porch with that young girl and just crying with her as she was crying about her mother getting stabbed. You wouldn't have saw me rushing her to class. I would have tried to treat her like an adult, like I would have been treated, like I want my own children to be treated.
Yeah, beautiful. Um, See, that's genuine. I mean, everything else, in my view, everything else in terms of how exciting an instructional class period could be is based, in my view, on that as a foundation that builds interest and curiosity in kids and trust that gets established between the kid and the adults at that school. And I saw that extended um, not only to your students, but to your staff. And I saw it with your parents, and I saw it with the alumni. And that really said a lot to me. Um, I can remember parent nights where we were doing our educare program, and we never saw crowds of parents coming that way. And it wasn't just because of what we were about to do; it's because they they knew they were part of something greater at that school. They were part of that school, and I just want to compliment you on anything you might address on because there's educators listening, there's parents listening. How do you build that type of community feeling where everyone seems to be mutually invested and we're all in it together. I know it wasn't always that case. So anything about the investment of parents and how you create that?
You know what's funny is, and I know Jose had the same experience, not because I ever watched it or talked about it with him, but I just know when a parent comes in to the office and ends up in the principal's office because something that happened, something, a choice their kid made, or something they're just upset about. There's like the way that I feel like we sort of work these days is you come in hot and you come in like making demands. You come in like, I'm going to do this and I'm in charge. And the times where I had a parent come in just ready to just, like punch me in the face or whatever, and they'd very angrily tell me what they're angry about, and I would say, yeah, that's that. I mean, I go, that sounds really frustrating. Um, and I want to say I appreciate you being here to stand up for your kid. And then you say, but I also want you to know that I'm not here to tell you that, your kid's a problem. Like, your kid, like, if it's something they did, it's like, they made a mistake today. We're a team. Like, my goal isn't to fight. I don't take any pleasure from making from punishment. I don't take pleasure from, like, I'm not trying to humiliate anybody. I just want them to have a better day tomorrow. Um, and the times where you see literal parents like come in like this, their shoulders hunched and they're just ready to box, and then you just kind of watch the shoulders drop down and the affect change, and just say, it sounded like it was a really hard day for them yesterday.
Mm,
I think
mm,
changing that, and I even my friends who have kids in school, and they say, Jeff, you were a principal, like, I gotta talk to the principal, like what do I do, like, how do I go in, should I just go in and make demands? And I go, hey, go in with questions and go in under the assumption that you're all there for the same goal. And I said, if you ask questions about what happened, and honest questions, not why did you do this horrible thing, but honest questions, and start it from that framework of, we have to solve this for my kid, most people will respond to that. And I think that's how it's different. Is I never saw a conversation with a family member or a parent or a student as a confrontation or a battle to take control. It was, the battle was really like, how do I help them get through, all of us get through this, and so that that kid can come back the next day, and when they walk back up that step, I'm there to say, hey, like, I'm happy you're here. Yesterday was a challenge. We all get to start today fresh. I'm really happy you're here. And that, I think changing that dynamic in that relationship is challenging right now, but I think that's what worked for us. Is I think parents felt like when they came in, it wasn't like they weren't coming in on the defense. They weren't coming in they didn't need to come in on the attack. They could come in as uh, a place that they could find partnership, and helping their kid grow up to be the best person they could be.
I totally agree, Jeff. And it was one thing I had this situation where, well, it started off, and I use this as a teacher, but I didn't think it'd work as a principal. I didn't really think about it. But ultimately, this one kid, I'll leave his name out of it, but he came in, and I think you remember we had this confrontation. I thought he was going to hit me with this skateboard in the main office, and he came at me, and I put my hand up. I was like, I think you need to settle down. And there's many answers to your questions too, but ultimately his parent came in all hot. Did you yell at my student? I was like, I never yell at your student. And I said, ma'am, when you want to come in here, ma'am, your student will be my student. Your child will be my student for the next year and a half. He'll be your child the rest of his life. You can fight with me, or we can work together. It's up to you. For the next year and a half, I'll be more than happy to go to battle. That's not my intent, though. My intent is to do what's best for your student. So again, and that really seemed to speak to him. And her shoulders dropped, her teeth, her mouth. She's like, I don't know what to do. And I've heard that a million times. I don't know what to do. Well, ma'am, this is my 25th year of having teenagers in my life. This is your first. So let's just work together on this. And when when parents, when students realize that you really are there for their success, it changes everything. And when they feel like, oh my God, he's really going to be my partner, it changes everything. I had intention to make sure parents, teachers, and students all felt welcomed. Everyone, my teachers felt that way, and it was really, and those who didn't feel that way, felt uncomfortable, and they became a pain in my butt. Sometimes they became a pain in Jeff's butt, but eventually they either left or we won them over. And ultimately, students felt welcome, parents felt welcomed. And one of the main things is I would always share data. The data we received, instead of punishing people, I always shared like, wow, here's what we're dealing with. I always try to engage parents instead of simply go to the back of the class and staple papers. That's not engagement. I would engage them. This is what I'm working on. Help me become part of my cabinet. So I had like this trust, this brain trust of parents they knew what I was working on. I'm working with chronic absenteeism. Why? How do I help? How do I address this? How do you get your kids to come to school? Because if you can't get them out of bed, how can I teach them? So this is our issue. I always created everything was our issue.
That sense of I keep hearing these are my children. These are we're all together raising your children here. And I was really taken, Jeff, by what you said and this is a new day, and yesterday is behind us. So let's make this day a better day. And that sense of forgiveness, that sense of acceptance, and I saw that as I watched you both in your leadership roles of kids are kids. We're all going to screw up. We're all, me too. I said, hey guys, bad day for me. Back off. I need a little space. And my kids, when I was teaching, would go, oh, I get you. I have those days. You have those days. So we can accept one another and move forward together on it and pull together for it. And here we are. And I want to kind of go fast forward into this present day where our kids, for everybody, and I know each of us have had our personal struggles and challenges, and the kids for sure, with all that's going on around them, pandemic, environmental fires and all that. How do you see us as adults best equipping kids to navigate through crazy times? What can we best do to support them through that? Any tips and ideas?
I instantly think of the time. I mean, I think the times at the school, I definitely witnessed this idea of the kind of like it's not just a shared accountability, but it's just a shared responsibility for each other. And I think Jose did an amazing job creating our peer mentor program that kind of supported that idea. Um, but even like watching just this last year, seeing videos of our former students at protests, speaking up for their community. I mean, there's one of our one of our former students, and she was a complete. She was a pain in the ass. She was grumpy as hell every day. Um, but her being she was just out in the community and saw someone in her community getting um, picked up by ICE and being mistreated. Not just all the legal problems that we're having with how they do things, but just physically abusing this person. And she's there with her sister, but she's a mom. She has, a really young child who needs her. She's got a huge amount of responsibility for that child, and yet she took the risk of kind of getting in their face a little bit, confronting them, videoing it, because she felt a responsibility to help that person who she didn't know. And when I talked to her after, because she'd asked, kind of what I thought about it, and I just said, you didn't stop them from taking this guy, but you know what, like you said, you could tell they had to act different. They had to stop hurting him, stop what I go. So that person is entering this tough time in their life, being locked up, but knowing that there's someone, a stranger out there who cares about them. I think about that. I think about I mean, you all know, like, because we lost our house, back in January in the fire, and I got kind of forced. I don't like to say forced, but I had a friend who went through kind of a similar experience in Hawaii, and so she kind of convinced me to put up a donor's shoes. It was amazing what happened, but just seeing a number of our former students who it wasn't like I wasn't expecting. It doesn't matter what they gave, but like I saw a few kids who threw like $5 my way that that I knew back in high school didn't have $5, and so it wasn't the money, but it was just like that sense of community that you build. Um, I think is what can really save us. I think we see communities standing up for themselves, um, to what's happening with immigration raids. We see my community standing up for itself, recovering from fires. We see communities standing up for themselves, um, with other natural disasters. With just so I think community just becomes this a thing that we have maybe undervalued, and that when we actually can collectively look out for each other, it's going to help us get through whatever. Because you can't do it alone, and B, it feels good to not be alone. It feels good to not be by yourself in a tough situation. So I think that's just a big lesson. A thing that I highly recommend is build community, and it's just don't just build it for yourself. Like find if you feel like people around you are struggling to do it, then lead it, be part of it. We saw kids do that. We saw kids create their own communities, create they went off into college when they saw struggles. They'd say, let's sit down and have a council. Like I think that's a what I would advise is just really, really value the community you have around you, and set the standard of being supportive of that.
Yeah. And you asking for support, I know what it's like in my life, how resistant I am to ask for something to
100%,
help me.
100%.
And for kids, and I remember, Jose, you mentioned this once, of how part of our work was kids being honest and bold enough and vulnerable enough to ask for help, ask for assistance. And that's a skill a lot of people just don't have. And I think that builds a community going, oh man, I need you. And people, oh, I'm willing to jump in because I want to help.
I think like Jeff was saying, anytime somebody finds out that I was a principal, it's like, well, what do we need? It's like if somebody finds out you're a doctor, you're like, I have this rash. Well, if we find out that we're principals or we're in education, what does education need today, Jose? And I just answered this question. I felt like there's two different things. One, I feel on a global scale, we need more critical thinking. We need people to look at the news and just simply ask, is this true? That's it. That's it. Is this true? Is it possible that this isn't the whole story? Things like that. We didn't need more critical thinking. And I don't think I had this comedian he's really funny. And I heard something he said. He said, the news today, and he used a particular news outlet, the news today has done to us what our parents said video games are going to do to us. The news today has done to our parents what they said video games would do to us. It has made them mush. And I really want our students are already there. They're already critically thinking, but they need some guidance. And second, I feel anytime we'd interview somebody, I'd always ask the question, what do you teach? And if they said a subject matter, they always went to the bottom of the list. Because ultimately, I need everybody to understand you don't teach history, you don't teach English, you teach people. And if you treat people like people, they tend to treat other people like people. And I think that when I didn't know what to do, when I didn't know when it wasn't in the principal handbook, when it wasn't in the manual, I always used love. I did the most thing I could for that person, whether it was a teacher or a parent in front of me or a student, because most things are adaptive. The technical stuff is easy. The technical stuff is right there. It's in the manual. You know what to do. The stuff that's not is love. And what I found out is most things are not. But if I address the needs of the student, you turned out those kids are not done yet. I was never who I was going to be at 16. But by the time those kids become 26 or 36 or 46, they become really great people because at one time in their life, there's this one kid that was a pain in my butt. He was such a pain in my ass. He ended up becoming a PhD in Berkeley in physics. And he used this line in our in this last video that we did about our school. This last line, he said, he was on a panel, and we always brought our freshmen to talk to our current kids at Berkeley, Chico, Davis, Stanford, wherever. We take them, and there's a panel up there, and I always start the same question. What do you know now you wish you knew then? When you were a freshman, what do you wish you knew what do you wish somebody would have told you? And this one kid said, at the end of it, he said, I want you to know that Mr. Navarro, I was a pain in Mr. Navarro's butt, but now I'm going to have a PhD in physics from Berkeley. I want you to know that there's a place in the valley that believes in you. When the rest of the world doesn't like you or doesn't like your color, what your language you speak, your zip code, understand there's a place in the valley that believes in you. There's a place called Social Justice Humanitas, and I really took a lot of pride in that. That my point is he was never finished. if I could just acknowledge that the kid in front of me is just a kid, his brain's not connected, I get it. But so often we want our educators want blood. This kid came in late, I want you to make him pay. And it's like, no, you don't learn like that. You don't learn like that either.
I mean, Jose, when we see kids for where they can go, what they can be, and they know that we see that of them, even if they don't see it yet, it opens up. This person's got my back. This person takes me in no matter, because they know something that I don't know of where I can go. And as you were talking, I was thinking of one of my favorite phrases is that we teach who we are, Parker Palmer's. That when, uh, so if I come in there with acceptance and adoration or honesty with you, that's what communicates to kids rather than I'm teaching you mathematics or English or whatever that is. And one of the things I admired about both of your styles of leadership is that you also saw that in your staff, and what I was very impressed by is how you wanted them to develop as people, not just as educators, but as human beings. And I know that staff training, professional development that we were placed in there with you on was really a key, because who they were was what's going to influence the kids, not just what they teach and what they carried as their value, as their heart values. So I just want to commend you. Anything you want to speak to in terms of developing the human being of the educator that then communicates what you guys have done.
But just real quick, Jeff said something. We were at our high school together. We were both teachers, and I couldn't make it to one of our sessions. We were doing this. I know you know what I'm about to talk about, Jeff. We were doing
Yeah.
this one
I
recruitment.
just appreciate you giving me credit this time, because sometimes you like one time I said
No. I always give you credit, but it really
I do it
influenced
all the
the way I
time.
see it, the way I saw the world. I knew I didn't know. I know I don't know what I don't know, and so I'm constantly curious. And the older I get, the more curious I get, which is something I really appreciate in other people. So I'm trying to emulate that, and I see that in you, Stu, and I'm trying to emulate that. Jeff said we had this one SLC at the school we were at, and they kept saying, "Well, if you join our SLC, you'll become a doctor." And there's like 15 girls for every guy, and like Jeff just got up and he said, "I want you to know that if you join, well, you may be a doctor, you may be a plumber, you may be a dentist, whatever in the future. We just want you to be the one that changes your profession. We want the one that we want you to actually lead your profession." And I remember when I heard that, that became our would that be Jeff? You speak at all of them now. That was awesome. That became our mantra is every, and we kept riffing off of it, but every profession needs a leader. Like, I don't care what you want to do. Somebody's going to have to be the leader, whether you are putting in sprinklers or you're changing out heart valves. Somebody needs to lead that profession. You be that. And and I remember we were told, what's your what is your CTE focus? And our CTE focus was reading and writing, because everybody's like, well, we're going to work on tech and we're going to work on science. It's like, great. Who's working on reading and writing? That was us. And that was us. We wanted to make our students not the best in the world, but the best for the world. And that was
Yes.
always really important to us. And it still is, no matter who I'm talking to, uh, whatever podcast I'm on, whatever, I'm always talking about the exact same thing. What are you doing for that? And I thought Jeff hit it on the head when he said, you're just going to be the one that changes your profession. And we're not going to collect 800 freshmen. 800 freshmen are not going to want to join our academy. We don't need 800. We only need 100. We only need those who have ears to hear. That's it. And I thought it was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny because when I was leaving Humanitas, there was oh, there's probably some people that were like happy about it, but there was definitely kids that came up to me that were like, Mister, what do you like? What am I supposed to do? And I one particular, and he was man as a ninth. I tell the story all the time. As a ninth grader, I had to help him out of class because he was so high, and he couldn't hardly walk, and and he'd been making some choices about who he was hanging out with and what they were doing, and this was that first year back after the pandemic, so everyone was struggling. And I just said, look, man, like what you're gonna do is what you've already. I mean, this was a kid that asked. He asked for an IEP. Like he said, I'm having trouble with classes. I think I need more help. He went from wanting to be, wanting to big gangbanger like his friend, to asking for his IEP. And I said, like, look, man, like, what you're gonna do is what you've always done, which is your best. Like, you've grown. Like, the person you were that walked in this building at the beginning of ninth grade is I mean, you've grown more than 2 years. Like, you're becoming someone who I would trust my kids with. And I said, so you're gonna keep going. You're gonna do your best. When you graduate, because you're going to graduate, I'll be there. Like, I'm gonna come to your graduation. And I did. I saw him and talked to him, and I was like, "What's your plan?" He's like, "Oh, Mister, school's not really my thing." He's like, I'm just gonna go to trade school and be an electrician." And I was like, "Just an electrician?" I was like, like, I'm having to rebuild my house. I need someone that I will trust to create the place where my family is going to be living and be safe. And I go, I love that you're doing that, because I know someone out there is going to have a safer, like, you're going to make someone's home safer, because you're not going to do this. You're going to do what's right by them. I go, I don't think you're just an electrician. I think you're going to be an electrician who helps people feel safe in their home. And I go, and I think that's awesome. So I still stick with that. And I think it's same with adults. I think it's you have to give people space to kind of figure out where they're at. And I think they so often come in. This was the world like Jose and I lived in at the school before we opened ours. And just the assumption of, like, it's it's teachers versus students, it's teachers versus admin. It's changing that narrative when people are immersed in something like that. To expect them to walk in and just flip a 180 isn't fair either. And so you also have to give the adult some space, um, to figure that out. To be like, it doesn't have to be that way. You don't have to, um, feel like you need to get revenge on a kid. Like, when a kid, you send a kid out and they go to the office, and then they come back to your room, whatever it is, 30 minutes later, and your assumption is, oh, they pulled one over on someone. I don't know, man. Maybe they didn't. Maybe they like maybe welcome them back and say, like, let's not assume that you gotta, like, beat down on people. And it's the same with teachers. We don't need to beat down on teachers. We don't need to beat down on principals and administrators. But
You know,
adults, it's challenging.
to do what you're saying, Jeff, and I'm right there with you on all of that, is I think it takes adults, teachers, to have the confidence, because it's easy to beat down on a kid. It's easy just to go after somebody, but it's hard, and unless you know that you can do it, to accept people and to consider a different way, that takes a lot of maturity and, in my way, awareness and confidence to know, oh, there's another approach. I don't know another approach because I know what to do, which is what I've always done, is combat people, defend myself, justify all that I'm doing. So that's what I look at with Educare. That's what I saw you with your staff going. How do you train people up with that awareness to go, and the confidence to know I can approach this not in an adversarial way. I can approach this in a way of empathy, kindness, and working with someone versus have to beat them.
Like you always said, Jose, it's sometimes for kids, if you build the right relationship and work right with them, they don't care about breaking rules, but they do care about breaking your heart. And I think that's stuck with a lot of people. Um, and I think sometimes that when a student had to have a tough conversation with Jose, and I know when they had tough conversations with me, I think the probably the worst punishment was that they had to feel our disappointment. And we could say, I'm disappointed in what you did, but I'm not disappointed in you. But
That's
I'm
right.
disappointed in what happened. So I think that needs to be the same with adults. I'm disappointed in what happened, but you're not a disappointment.
Absolutely. That idea that you try to separate the deed from the doer. And I remember we had kids, and I that would rather punch me than talk to me. Like, the idea of talking to me would that was just horrible. The idea that I had to face what I did. Why don't
Just
you just
suspend me. Just suspend me.
let me go home and play Xbox and smoke out all day? And I'm like, no, you're going to face what you did. And that was really restorative. It may be more painful and it was not efficient, but it was effective to make people face what they did. And I think if we were able to do that at any time in our lives, just make people, let them know, like, yo, brother, what you did was not acceptable. Who you are is amazing. But what
Mm-hmm.
is not acceptable. I cannot have that here. If you can sit there with somebody and hold space with them, I know that holding space has really become like this left term, but I really mean it. If you can hold space and allow somebody to see what they did, they'll correct. But if you try to correct them, usually they won't. Ultimately, holding hands with somebody, just walking that long walk, taking that long view, like you said, Jeff, is very difficult to do, especially in the moment, because it's so much easier just to get rid of the kid. But
Yeah.
that's not effective. It may be efficient. I could suspend somebody in 3 minutes. 3
Yeah.
minutes. It may take me 3 months to fix that situation, to hold all the circles, have the parents come, all that stuff. But it's effective. It's just not efficient. And people want efficiency. And I get it. In California, you have, I mean, when I was principal, we were 48th in per pupil funding. Fifth largest economy, we were 48th. I think we're 27th. Still a joke. It's still a joke. So we're incredibly underfunded, incredibly under-resourced. We're doing the best we could with what we had where we're at, that Theodore Roosevelt quote. And we did it because ultimately,
Well, the depth and genuineness of your Heartset leadership, your empathy, your sincerity, how you care about your whole community, it's a gift to us all. And I hope today that who's ever listening and viewing just can take of so much of what you've both shared today. And as we close out today, any closing thought, word, comments you each want to push out there? Would love to have you close it out.
Jeff,
Man, let's take care of each other.
I totally agree. If you can figure out a way to sit there and be kind, just be kind to each other, because there's so many different people that are willing to beat us down, but how many people are actually willing to pick us up? My son told me one time, he said, "Hey, Papa, I don't need to know everything's rosy. I don't need you to be on my side all the time." And I said, and I thought about it, and I came back the next day, and I said, "Mijo, I want you to understand that life is going to kick your ass, and you won't have a cheerleader. You won't have anybody who's on your side. That's me now. I am on your side. I will always be on your side. I want you to actually be better than me. I don't expect you to be like me. So yeah, I'm not trying to blow smoke up your butt and tell you everything's going to be rosy. I just want you to know that I love you and I'm on your side." And I think every single one of our kids, every one of our teachers just need to hear that. They need to hear that they matter, that I see you, you're worthy. What does that look like? Well, when somebody came to my office, knocked on the door, "Do you have a second?" I always kept my door I hated it, but I was such a verbal linguistic learner that every time somebody was talking in the office, I couldn't focus. I was always ready to answer the question. Someone door shut, but people knew they could always knock on it. Open door. "Hey, Mr. Navarro, do you have a second?" "For you, I have two, because you matter. You're worthy of my time, and I see you." And kids, the last thing I'll say is that students, diss is a big deal. To diss somebody, because respect is all they have. They don't have money. They don't have influence. They have their respect. So if you want to disrespect somebody, you're going to get that in return. But if you respect them, because I've heard it before, "I can learn, mister, just not from you. I can learn, just not from you, because you don't respect me." But if you respect those people, those students, those teachers, well, you can't teach people you don't love. You just can't. Pedro Noeta came to our school. I invited him, and he came in, and he noticed that right away. And he still uses our school as an example. And I told him, I go, "Dude, I want 10%, bro. I want
I
10%
know,
of your."
seriously.
And I said, he came in and he saw this African-American student sitting in the back of the class. And he said, goes, the first class, we go, "Jose, what's going on?" And as an African-American teacher. And he said, "What's going on?" And I said, "Well, let's just go." And then we saw Educare doing their thing in our NPR and making everybody feel welcome. And then I said, "That student in his IEP says that he needs to take a break. So we have a space in the back of the room. He can come, but he can rejoin." We went back in the same classroom. The kid was active. He needed equity. If I give everybody who's thirsty a hamburger, that's great. I'm still thirsty though. Give them what they need. That kid needed to take a brain break. And he was able to take that brain break and then rejoin us. It was exhausting to meet all of our students' needs, but until we did, they were going to continue to fail until we met all of our teachers' needs. And we couldn't do it. I mean, it's not sustainable. That's why Jeff and I are no longer principals. We're not supposed to sustain, but the work should. We as
That's
people
right.
not, but the work should. And so we do hope that some of that is still there.
Well,
I'm
it
s-
lives on at your school, but it also lives on in your kids and the ones who you mentioned, who won't forget you and they'll reach back out 10, 15 years later. So I want to not only thank you for today, I want to thank you for your lives, for your commitment, um, for just the depth of how you dedicate yourself to our kids, all of our kids. And so all the viewers here today, I think you had a treat today, hearing from both Jeff and Jose, and hopefully glean some of the wisdom and the dedication that you capture for yourself. And we invite you to come again. There'll be more podcasts to listen to with great people. And be well. And Heartset leaders in all of us, we all carry it in the ways we do, and let it just stay strong and share it out in big ways. So thanks, everybody. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks, Jose, for today. We
Thank-
appreciate you.
appreciate you, Stu. Thank you.